This is an ABC News special report. Hurricane Harvey, state of emergency.
You're looking at some of the first images to come out of Rockport, Texas, which was hit by the eye of Hurricane Harvey overnight at around 10:30 local time. We're looking at images of Rockport High School, already severely damaged and likely to be much more damage as this storm, which hit as a Category 4, is likely to sit and spin along the Texas coast for days. Good morning. I'm Dan Harris alongside Amy Robach on this Saturday morning. Also with us, Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z. Paula is off this morning, but we have some steady hands to guide us through hours of breaking news coverage.
That's correct. It is Saturday for those who have not looked yet. August 26th, Hurricane Harvey on its path of destruction in Texas at this hour. Storm officials are calling it a significant disaster so far.
We've got more images coming in overnight of water overtaking streets, flooding homes and buildings, rescue crews saving people who chose to stay in their homes, and Harvey is not going anywhere, as Amy said.
That's right, and we mentioned it did hit as a Category 4, and the unfortunate part about Harvey right now, it's expected to continue to pound the Gulf Coast for days with epic rain and high winds.
And Ginger, I know you're tracking this closely. Where do things stand as we come on the air right now?
We've been watching this all night. It is so hard to take your eyes off of this radar image because once that storm got close enough to be on radar, you saw that eye deepening, this thing strengthening. Now we have it over land as a Category 2, max sustained winds of still 100 miles per hour. So this is still a significant hurricane. A lot of times they hit and they quickly die out, but this one here still has those 100-mile-per-hour winds. It will still move to the north and west, and right now a tornado watch. There have been tornadoes with damage too. So we've got so many threats to talk about, including that inundating rain that I will get to in just a bit.
And someone who's been experiencing all of that and has weathered this storm throughout the evening and will continue to do so throughout the morning hours is our Rob Marciano, who is in Port Lavaca, Texas. Rob, tell us what it's like where you are.
We've just been getting blasted all night, Amy. It's unbelievable. And this, what you're seeing right now, is a lot more calm than it was 2 and 3 and 4 hours ago. We've had a bit of a wind shift, and the eye now is scooted just a little bit to our south and east. But our hotel, which I'm honestly just 10 feet from the door of the hotel, parts of it have been getting scraped off throughout the night. Siding has been coming off, parts of the roof coming off. This is a well-built, nearly new hotel that's elevated, and we are still surrounded by water. So the storm surge that came in at high tide around midnight last night has not left. We are still an island here. Power's been out, obviously, as it is throughout most of southeast Texas. And this storm, though, this weekend just a little bit because it's so close to us and because we're on that right front quadrant, it refuses to let up as far as the velocity of this wind and just how painful it is to be outside. We're not getting many reports as to what's going on in Port Lavaca. I can tell you this, when we came in yesterday afternoon, I have never seen a town that has been evacuated like this one. So that's the good news, is that there is not many people, if at all, in this town right now, and the people that are where I am is mostly media in a slightly elevated position in a well-built structure, but obviously getting it hit really, really hard right now. Amy?
And Rob, I know you've covered so many hurricanes over the years. How does this one compare so far?
Well, I can tell you this, because it came in at night, and because the winds were so strong, this felt a lot like Hurricane Rita in 2005. As a matter of fact, it got down to that same pressure when it came on. And when a storm comes in at night like it did, like this one did, there's a level of fear that is ramped up that is absolutely indescribable. All night long, all you heard was basically this building slowly being ripped apart, at least the exterior portions of it. So this is a storm that I haven't experienced certainly in over 10 years. And I don't know about the rest of the crew that I'm with, but you get a bit of storm amnesia. I honestly forgot what it feels like to be in a major hurricane.
And Rob, I know
at times, I'm not going to lie, it's frightening.
Rob, I know that rain stings right now. We don't want to keep you out there too long, but I do want to know and remind people that just because it's come on shore, you're showing us, but the wind still can cause that flying debris. Have you seen a lot of flying debris behind you? I know you're in a protected place, but just let people know that the emergency, the urgency is still there.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. We often relax when a hurricane comes on, makes landfall, but you're talking about a Category 4 that takes some time to ramp down, but because this one is still very close to the shoreline, obviously, it's not letting up anytime soon, and we still have the tornado threat, we still have the storm surge threat, and we clearly still have the wind and the rain threat. I'm sure that Ginger is going to mention is going to be ongoing not just today, but for days, potentially into the latter part of this week. Amy?
Rob,
I mean, can you hear the roar? The roar of this is just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, that leads to the question I was going to ask you, and I ask you this as a friend and a colleague as well, but I think because a lot of people at home are going to be wondering, you know, they told everybody to evacuate, and yet you are still there, many members of the media are still there. Just give us a sense of what you're doing to protect yourself and your team.
Well, like I said, this hotel is nearly brand new. It's elevated. It's honestly quite perfectly situated if you're going to camp out in a hurricane. So as far as being able to give our viewers a sense for what is happening in a town that has been evacuated and to be able to do it safely, this is the perfect spot. Dipping in and out, obviously, there is some peril here, but we're comfortable with the wind direction right now as opposed to the way it was last night where things were coming off the building and we really couldn't be here. Right now, we feel pretty safe that this is a decent spot. It's never entirely safe, but it's safe enough that we can bring you the pictures and give you a sense of what it feels like and what it looks like to be inside a major hurricane, Dan.
And Rob, really quickly, how much longer do you think you'll be in winds like you're in right now? For how much longer?
Well, the tough part about it is when you're in the northeast quadrant, the right front quadrant, and the storm is passing to your south, we're going to be in it for quite a bit longer. I mean, probably at least through sunup where we'll feel this sort of wind, and then not really dying off too much until I would think into the afternoon. So it's going to be a process, and we're going to be in it for quite a while, I think, Amy.
All right, Rob. Well, hopefully you can take some shelter right now. We'll cut you a break, but we're going to check back in with you in just a bit. In the meantime, we're going to turn now to ABC's Matt Gutman, who's joining us just south of where Rob is. He's in Corpus Christi, Texas. Matt, give us a sense of what it's like where you are.
Hey, Amy, you know, one of the things that Rob just mentioned is that the storm came in at night, and essentially what it did is blind everybody. Now, we saw it howling in here for hours before it actually came with those hurricane force winds of the Cat 3, 4 later than that. I just want to let you see that the wind is still whistling here. I mean, this is many hours after the eye passed us, but it's literally whistling through. This is our hotel. Like Rob's hotel, it was built to the latest hurricane codes after Sealy came through here in 1970. Very strongly built, but that wind is still howling through here. And all night long, basically, we had plexiglass panels from the hotel explode. So that wind for hours simply just worked and hammered away at places on this hotel and everywhere here in Corpus Christi, basically detonating things and eventually just coming and making things pry loose. I mean, look at this. I don't even know what this is. I think this was some sort of tent. The metal completely bent. I'm going to have Juan, our cameraman, come with us. This just happened. We came out about an hour ago to see this. Trees snapped from over there, flung across the street, debris everywhere, and I want to show you why it's going to be so difficult for rescue workers to get to people who need help. As I said, this storm essentially came in the middle of the night. That's why it was so hard for folks here to assess the damage. And, you know, we talk about towns like Rockport that have been absolutely devastated. We drove through there yesterday. It's a completely flat town. It was a ghost town. There was a mandatory evacuation, but you asked earlier, why did everybody leave? That's because in Texas they can't and they don't physically force people out. So they're not going to send police officers to people's doors to get them out of the house, even if there is a mandatory evacuation. So what happened overnight, rescuers simply didn't have the resources, didn't want to risk their personnel by sending them out into this and much worse to possibly get hurt. lose vehicles when they couldn't see what they're going. I'm gonna have my cameraman Juan take 2 steps back and show you again. You know, some of the debris that we're seeing, this is iron. I don't know where this came from. I don't know how it got here, but that is the force of this wind. That's how powerful it's been. And this stuff just kept howling through all night long. Rob also mentioned it. One of the things that's so startling about this storm, and I've covered a bunch myself, is just how long and how relentless it's been, just hammering us for hours here.
And I think that's the thing, is I'm watching both of you just covered in rain, and they will not get dry for 24 hours or so, because I've been out there covering them too.
No, probably not.
Matt, we see behind you a building that likely has a generator, because I see some lights, but hundreds of thousands of people are without power, and that's really the next thing, is that not only can they not get the emergency services right away, but people don't have their power for a lot of their medical services. They don't have water, and likely for a very long time. So I'm assuming everybody around you out of power, and that is a secondary issue as we go through the next 48 hours.
So we're absolutely, I mean, we're very lucky here because we're right on the line of the main hospital in Corpus Christi. So we happen to have been very fortunate. This hotel, I think, still has electricity. It's not even on a generator, but everywhere around us, it is completely blacked out. Well over 200,000 people without power. There's a mandatory water boil order in effect because now they're concerned that perhaps some contaminated water has seeped in with the drinking water. So there's concern about that. What it means when the power goes out, it means that in many of these low-lying areas, pumps will stop working. That means that all of that water, Rob talked about storm surge 6 feet, they're an island, all of that is going to come in here and it's going to have nowhere to go. And that is going to be the story over the next couple of days. Water everywhere, flooding in the streets. All morning our phones have been buzzing. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but our phones have been buzzing with those hazards telling us to, you know, flash flood warning in Texas for another 4 hours. There's major concern that not only will people get caught in these flash floods, but the kind of damage that the sustained water present in these low-lying areas for a long time will cause. That is a serious and significant danger here, Amy.
And Matt, I was going to ask you, have you seen anybody out and about? You mentioned it was a ghost town when you got in, but has, you know, some people who do stay like to venture out and see what's going on. Have you seen anything like that?
You know, basically all night long there have been, sporadically we've seen yahoos driving up and down, just kind of scoping things out. So there have been some people, sorry, the wind's knocking our cameraman a little bit, but yeah, there have been some people driving around, and just a few minutes ago I think a convoy of cars was allowed in here because the winds have calmed down substantially here, and maybe some people trying to get back to their homes or maybe even try to get to the hospital down the street have been allowed in, but mostly extraordinarily, eerily quiet in towns like Corpus Christi and, of course, up and down the coast.
I was just going to ask you about the seeming diminution of the wind speeds there, because I'm struck by how intense the situation was for our Rob Marciano just moments ago as compared to what we're seeing in the backdrop of your live shot there. Are they expecting the wind and rain to ramp back up, or is the worst over?
It's unclear. So last night, the mayor of Rockport was told and said on Nightline that he expects hurricane-force conditions to persist through 8 p.m. tonight. I mean, that is an astoundingly long period of time for a place like that to suffer those kinds of winds. It's calmed down. We're also protected by 2 pretty significantly large buildings, which is why we're able to stand and shoot here. But the winds have calmed down here. We're also in a different part of the storm, the south. West of it right now, so we're getting a little bit less rain and a little bit less wind, but that was not the case for, you know, many hours on end. And this part of Corpus Christi and north of here are going to get well over 20 inches of rain. So even though the wind is not as powerful as it has been, snapping things right off of the trees, lights down, what we are going to keep getting is all of this water, this precipitation. And again, this is what meteorologists have been warning about. They're calling this an almost unfathomable amount of rain hitting this part of Texas, guys.
And it really is all about geography. We saw, and Rob kept mentioning, I'm in the northeast quadrant. We call that the dirty side.
Right.
That's the side that is going to consistently have the biggest storm surge, the most wind speed, and really the one that's going to stick with it the longest. he just said he's on the southwest side. He's just south and west. So weaker winds doesn't take away any of the urgency of what has to, what they have to look out for.
Is flooding still a concern?
Flooding is still a concern, but he will see either the same or weakening because the storm is moving northwest away from them.
All right. We want to thank, by the way, Matt
And guys, I
Rob
should
for sticking
say-
it out. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, so the mayor of Corpus Christi, his name is Joe McComb. He lost his daughter-in-law, 2 of his grandchildren, and some other very good friends in a massive flash flood in Blanco, Texas, 2 years ago. So when this mayor in this town issued this order for people to get out if they can, he meant it. He knows it personally. And he said, and everybody up and down the Texas coast here knows, yes, the wind will pry things loose. The wind will create significant damage, but it is the water, the flash flood, that is by far the most dangerous thing. That is the real killer here. And one of the concerns from law enforcement here is, sorry, we're moving around a little bit, is that this wind, it's probably, I don't know, a tropical depression 4-strength wind right now, but this is going to give people a false sense of security. They're going to say, hey, it's not that bad. Maybe we can go where we need to go. We'll try to visit friends. We'll try to visit our property. It's a very bad idea. Officials are still telling people hunker down, stay in shelter, do not move unless you have an absolute emergency and need to get to a hospital.
It's a point that you just can't hammer home strongly enough. We've seen it time and again with these major hurricanes. Katrina comes to mind. It's not just the wind, it is the water that comes during the storm, and in this case, particularly after. Matt Gutman, thank you very much for braving the elements for us. We're going to be coming back to you many times through the course of this morning.
And we've been checking in with emergency officials all throughout the evening. In fact, our Nightline's Juju Chang just spoke recently to Fire Chief of Rockport, Steve Sims, for the latest on what's going on in that area. Let's take a listen.
A lot of fairly severe. We haven't been able to get out and really look at things much other than what's right around close to our station. The eye wall just passed over us, and our wind has picked back up again, so we're hunkered down in our main station.
And there are reports that there are several buildings, including a high school, that have partially collapsed. There's reports that there are seniors trapped in a senior center there. Will you attempt rescue operations in the middle of the night?
Not with the wind like it is right now. We have nothing to get on the highway with. Our hands are tied, and it's killing all of us.
I'm sure as first responders, that must be the hardest thing, to have to sit and wait.
Very much.
130-mile-an-hour winds. What does that sound like in the fire department when you went over you?
The best way I can describe it is a tin can being kicked down the road.
That loud? That
loud, and get your nerves on the end.
Sure. You're part of the fabric of this community. What fears do you have for your town tonight?
I fear we're gonna really see some severe damage. Like I say, we haven't been able to get out and see what we got going, but it's not looking good.
The entire country has our eyes on you tonight, and our thoughts and prayers go out to you tonight. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much.
And our thanks to Juju for that.
Nightline's Juju Chang. Worth pointing out, Hurricane Harvey is the first Category 4 to make landfall in Texas since Carla, since 1961. So we're in the midst of a historic storm for this state. And Ginger, let's talk about what happens next, because it's not getting any better.
It is not, and I think we need to eventually get to the path. But remember, this is a storm that was a tropical storm, and within 48 hours became a Category 4. So it intensified very quickly. It is currently a Cat 2 with 100-mile-per-hour max sustained winds. I want to take you to the radar and explain, because what you'll hear today a lot is it made 2 landfalls. And you'll say, well, how does that happen? Rockport is where it first made landfall. Then it goes over a bay, Copano Bay, and makes another landfall. So you'll hear that it did, and now it's moving northwest. And now we have those tornado watches. That's what makes it, on top of still wind speeds of 100 miles per hour, on top of all of the rain threat, you've got those tornadoes. And we've already seen damage from them, even as far north as close to Houston, one of the suburbs of Houston. Here's the track. Watch this thing, guys. It makes a loop this weekend. It tries to cross almost back over where it came on land. And so the models have taken it now a little farther west than they did before, but this is an even worse situation for a place like Houston, because by Wednesday, early morning, you're on that right side. And even if it's still only a tropical storm, you can have another 6 to 12 inches of rainfall on that northeast side again
by Wednesday.
Through Wednesday.
It's still going to be a significant storm.
Correct.
But
And
what
that's-
about the area that gets hit twice?
Right, and the area that gets hit twice, and that's why where Matt was saying the threat's not over, it's not just not over because of the power and because of the rainfall, it's because it's coming back. It's because it will make this U-turn, a loop, a full loop over these areas just west of Victoria and come back over, it's going to feed off that ocean again.
Wow.
It's looking
So
for
it'll
it.
strengthen.
Yes, and why this is all happening, because we've got two big ridges of high pressure. They're like big people blocking you, and there's no way for this storm to go anywhere.
It's
The
moving
high pressure-
so slowly.
The high
Correct.
pressure comes down from the north. It's that
there's
blue
one-
and white area on top.
There's a ridge that's happening in the west, there's a ridge that's happening over in the southeast. And so this is smushed between. And this is why this entire time we've been talking about significant rainfall on the order of up to 3 feet in places, because this is a 5 to potentially 7-day event. And that's why.
Has Texas ever seen anything like this?
It's a great question. So they've had already, let's just set the scene, more than 9 inches in places in Texas. From a tropical event, the state of Texas has seen 48 inches of rainfall before. So yes, they have done it. It is not a good thing when this happens, because I do a lot of these stories on GMA every morning where San Antonio or Austin has 2 to 4 inches of rain overnight and they flood and emergency services are out and there are water rescues. Now we're talking about an easy 10 to 20 inches in some of these highly populated areas. I'm mostly concerned by tomorrow morning. I think we're going to be talking about some of these inland areas where people said, oh, I'm going to go drive. It's Saturday night. And then they drive right into water. And that's where we're going to see a secondary story come out of this, is that inland flooding. That's where we lose life and property.
Let's go back to something among the many ominous things you said, was that this hurricane could strengthen. So are we talking it could strengthen back up to a Category 4, Category 3?
No, I think the problem is most of the time it hits land, dies out, usually has something that kicks it out, grabs, absorbs the system, and no more, we don't have a tropical system any longer. This is staying a tropical system. It's not going to get stronger, but it will remain a tropical storm. A lot of times they become a depression or just a low. This looks like it's trying to stay a storm for 5 days. A tropical
Over the same
storm.
area,
And remember,
basically.
tropical storm means you're at 40-mile-per-hour winds. So not only do you have that torrential rain, but you still have a very gusty wind coming with it. So this is, I don't know that this longevity, except for Tropical Storm Allison, which did $5 billion in damage in Texas, 23 people dead, 70,000 homes destroyed in Houston. That's the type of thing that we're concerned about with this.
And has the state, in your view, you've been watching this for days, has the state prepared adequately?
When Matt said that this state doesn't evacuate, I was taken aback, because I actually didn't know that. I saw when Corpus Christi said this is a voluntary evacuation, I thought, okay. I think that sometimes words can, just making sure people know. I had people writing me, my sister-in-law lives there, what should I do? What should we tell them? Where do they go? It's very difficult in this situation because, again, if you go to San Antonio, I still think you're going to see significant rainfall. You have to go pretty far. I kept telling people that are very close to me, try to go to Dallas. At least they're going to stay north of this system as far as we know.
But your message unequivocally was get out.
Right.
Get out, yeah, especially at the coastline. There's no reason to be in the place where Rob is.
I know
Port Lavaca
in
the
other
Northeast
states,
quadrant.
and you've covered hurricanes too, I've ridden along with police officers, I'm sure we all have, and they knock on the door and they say, we need your next of kin if you won't leave, to try and explain how serious the situation is. It could be a life or death decision to stay.
In Port Aransas, they were having people, I believe, write their social security number on their arm. That's where we got last night.
And tell us again, go over this dirty side and what the consequences could be for the path of this storm for Houston, which is the largest city in that area.
Right. So the Northeast quadrant is where Rob was. That's why you saw him blown around still at this hour, still in a Category 2. So I think, and probably Dan Manzo, who's upstairs, the meteorologist there, could probably even circle it for us here. It is basically that right side. And what happens is you're taking the motion of the storm, so the 9-10 miles per hour that it's working, plus the wind speeds. So you have an additional motion velocity plus the velocity of the winds within. And that's where we're concerned about. So now that the worst of it is a little bit inland. And that quadrant, though, is like you take a pie piece out of the circle. Yep. And so it's a full 45 degrees that you can slice right out of that radar. And that's who has the worst of the winds right now.
Ginger, we're going to be talking about all of these issues a lot through the course of this morning, but excellent to have your expertise with us. Let's bring in now Colonel Steve Metz from the Texas National Guard, who joins us on the phone. Colonel, thank you very much for joining us on what we know is an extremely busy morning for you. Just give us a lay of the land. How are things going from your perspective right now in the middle of this historic storm?
Well, the biggest things we have going on is yesterday we had 900 Texas Military Department members who were activated. Now that number has grown to 1,200. We expect it to grow to 1,700 by the end of the weekend, and we have 500 more on standby. For the most part, we're still standing by, waiting for the first responders to be able to go in. They're kind of waiting for an opportunity, and so we're waiting to get in there with them. One of the things that we have done is we have 8 shelter teams that are out either running or helping shelters, and they've reported as of 2 this morning, over 1,500 evacuees had made it to their shelters.
And are you getting a lot of distress calls as of right now?
So they're not, generally speaking, people won't call us directly. They'll call and they should call their first responders, their local agencies, their state agencies, because we're primarily supporting them. We're not taking the lead. So wherever those agencies, if people need help, need assistance, go with your first responders first. Go with the people normally in charge, and what we would do is we're available and where needed, we'll be there to support them, give them extra transportation, logistic support, etc.
Colonel Metz, where are you riding out the storm, and what are things like where you are at this hour?
I'm at the headquarters in Austin. We have many teams forward right now, and so we're getting reports from those, but we have an operations center here that's getting reports in across the state. Obviously, we're all very focused, and there's a lot of stuff coming in. But the weather here is obviously nothing compared to what it is down at the coast.
And Colonel Metz, what is your biggest concern at this point? I mean, you have such a long ways to go before this is over. Ginger Z, our meteorologist here, saying, the state of Texas might not be in the clear till mid next week. Tell me what your biggest concerns are right now at this hour.
The biggest concerns right now are just an opportunity to get in and do what we need to do. Until the first responders and until our people can get in behind them or beside them, we're not going to be able to do anything. So right now we're still standing by waiting for that. As long as the winds stay where they are, we're going to have a lot of difficulty with any of our helicopter or airplane assets coming in to help the way they normally would. We have planned for the long haul. It's not, a weekend operation. We planned for however long this is going to take. We have more people on standby, and everything we're doing, we've practiced this sort of thing before. So now our biggest concern is, the opening to go in and do what we've been trained for.
Given the potentially massive impact of this storm, and perhaps we could even say inevitably massive impact of this storm, which is expected to stick around for days, if not a week, do you have enough resources to do what you need to do? And are you getting the help you need from the federal government?
So I would say absolutely. We're constantly reevaluating the situation. We certainly can bring in more people if needed. There's a level where, if you bring in more people, too much help can be worse than no help if it's not managed correctly. So we have the right amount of people for the job right now. The assistance from the federal government is going to take the financial burden off the state of Texas, so that helps. We started with 700, we moved to 900, we're up to 1,200 people now. We'll be at 1,700 by the end of the weekend. So we're going to continue to monitor the situation, and if it needs more resources, we have the ability to pull in more.
Colonel Metz, I know that we've been talking about inland flooding being the big concern in the hours and days to come. You talked about practicing. Is that what you've been focusing on, these inevitable water rescues that may be taking place here in the next few days?
Well, so yes, we've had experiences with floods in the past, with tropical storms in the past, especially flooding in this area. So we've worked with organizations like Texas Task Force 1. We have 160 what we call high-profile vehicles that we've put forward. Those are basically trucks that are very high off the ground, so they can navigate deep waters better than normal vehicles. So we've had experience doing this kind of thing before. We've worked with agencies like the Department of Public Safety and the Texas Division of Emergency Management in joint operations before. So we've trained on this sort of thing, and again, ideally we wouldn't want to have to use them in an actual tragedy, but when we have to, everyone is proud to be a part of Texans Helping Texas.
Colonel Steve Metz of the Texas National Guard, a man with a big job, likely to get even bigger as the days go on with this massive storm sitting over your neck of the woods. We wish you nothing but good luck, and thank you very much for your time on this busy morning.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.